Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first official Champions Way podcast. This is Champions Way, helping you live the life of a champion and win every day in all aspects of life, professional, personal, physical, and financial. I have the legend, the man, the myth, the legend himself here, Dan, the Godfather Januzzi, with me. Dan, always a
You're,
pleasure.
you're too kind, man. Ready to get this thing started.
So today we're going to dive in on the components of leadership. Dan's a little more well versed in it than I am, but we're each both equally qualified, or not equally, but qualified to be able to kind of talk about some of this stuff. And I think one of the things we both believe in, Dan, is development of your team as leaders, because that's ultimately what's most important. Anything you want to add on that?
I agree 100%. I mean, my theories on leadership and the principles of leadership are heavy on you've got to be more worried about your team than yourself. It's one of the first things when you have to sit down with somebody and you're talking about management, whether it's in a job, whether you're searching for a job, whether you're looking for somebody to bring on board. When you're looking at leadership qualities, self-sacrifice is probably the first thing. If somebody doesn't understand self-sacrifice, then they really don't understand how to manage. I think it's definitely easier as you mature in life to understand management and leadership when you have a family. But the first principle right off the bat to me is like you have to have self-sacrifice and be willing to go all out for your team. Which also means that you're looking for people that have the same qualities or at least similar qualities, that you can help work on or help develop in people.
Yeah, I agree. So just so everybody kind of understands, when you say self-sacrifice, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Let's elaborate a little bit on that.
Well, I think for me, being a leader was always instinctive. I was lucky I grew up around a father that ran his own business and had a lot of employees, and I grew up around an uncle that had his own business and had a lot of employees. And being somebody that even as a young man, starting work early and wanting to be a leader early, being the oldest of five in a very strict household, always being a captain in sports teams, being put in charge of people as a young adult, as a young man, definitely forces those qualities. But as I've gotten older and been in different positions of leadership in my life, and the things that I always thought came easy to me and should come easy to other people, um, you understand that when people don't have a similar background as do I have, it's not as what's the right word? I can't assume that it's easy for other people because what comes easy for me is just because I was thrown into the mix of being forced to be a leader early on. But what I mean by self-sacrifice is if you're an older brother, to however many brothers and sisters you got, the first thing you learn is self-sacrifice because you're responsible for your younger brothers and sisters. You're responsible for that group, and it teaches you that sometimes you might have to throw yourself in front of a punch or throw yourself in front of a problem that one of your siblings may have. And I learned self-sacrifice before I even knew what the word was. So I was blessed that I was taught that by my parents and by my uncle and grandparents. That self-sacrifice is the first part of being a good leader. You know, Other qualities that have to come along with that are, that a lot of people take for granted is empathy. People that don't have kids, people that were never an older brother or sibling, people that didn't have responsibility early on, don't understand the quality of empathy. And it's really hard to lead other people, manage other people, and direct them and get them to do what you want, get them to relate to you without understanding self-sacrifice and without having the ability to be empathetic for somebody when they're going through a specific situation. Um, and I know whenever when we have these talks, it's the way a lot of this information is going to come across is that it's going to be all over the place. So as you're bringing certain dialogue out of me, obviously, I'm going to run off in different areas. But, I think right off the bat, even when you're interviewing people for positions, interviewing people for management, upper management, those are qualities that you try to discuss and talk about without actually being direct because you really want to see if that person that's sitting across from the table from you is talking, like this on a Zoom call or something like that. You want to see if people even have that understanding right off the bat. And I'll tell you, as I've definitely grown in management and, the longer I'm in leadership positions, it really shows when somebody has been put through a lot of responsibility at an early age. I can usually spot that in somebody very early, and it has nothing to do with age or maturity level. Sometimes people are just dialed up to have those qualities of leadership, and they may not even know they had it. Back when we started working together, you were designated to have that kind of ability. But I think when I met you, you didn't even know that you had a lot of those qualities and ability. But I sensed that in you from one of the first times I met you, because you were already acting like an older sibling to the other employees in your store. um, it's hard to describe, but I can see those traits in people at a very early age, and it just comes from being put through some responsibility early on. But definitely that self-sacrificing quality is the most important, because a good manager is not going to get people to follow them if the people that are following them sense that the first time you as a leader come under pressure, you're throwing them under the bus, or
Right.
you're not defending them.
Hmm.
And I think from our time working together, one of the biggest things that I was able to be successful at was, taking the verbal beatdowns and the directions that I was getting from my superiors, and never really putting that on to the
Yeah.
people that were subservient to me or were working for me. And that's a form of self-sacrifice, always going above and beyond for the people that are working within your team.
Yeah, I think those are real good points because it's not just. I remember that was one of the things that we talked about was being able to withstand a lot of the what upper management brings to you and not letting your teams feel the effect of that. That I think that's one of a very very key thing because it's your job to essentially shield them. Like you said, and I think it's the other point too is it's interesting because we live in today in an age where right data helps make decisions, but at some point there's still a human element. And when you have like the way people interview people nowadays is there's questionnaires, there's personality tests, there's they're going to ask various questions to get different things out of you, but at the end of the day, like you can't tap into a leader and you can't see their potential just off of that. A lot of times it comes down to instincts and just having that it factor, being able to identify one, but also seeing what they're like when they're put under pressure of a situation. Because you and I both know, we've interviewed plenty of people in our time. An interview is an interview. You can put as much pressure as you want on somebody in the interview, but they're just trying to impress you. You know. So at the end of the day, it's what happens when things get tough, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's why I think any true leader, as they're developing themselves, I always had problems when I was given a script that I had to interview with, because I real quick found out that I had a good perception of when somebody could be a leader or not. And
Mm-hmm.
it usually came from more open-ended questions that you can't even read off of a chart, because it actually happens systematically as you're engaging in conversation. It was always very hard for me to work off a question strip. There might be a few good questions on there that I would want to gather some information for, but when you're really trying to find out if somebody's, especially when you're hiring for any type of leadership position, you almost have to go off script and go off instincts, because people are there. People get prepared. I mean, you and I both know. I mean, however many interviews we had to do, people could get prepared with scripts for interviews. Like, oh, here's what they're going to ask you. These are general questions. So I'd rather not ask any of those questions, because I don't want to see somebody prepared. I want to really throw stuff at people and see how they respond to it. To your point, that's really how you're testing how somebody can handle things analytically when they're put under pressure. And that's always what shows people's true colors. I mean, that's in life, that's in relationships, that's in work, that's in sports, it's in everything. Is people's true colors come out when they're put under pressure.
Right.
So
I'm
I
sorry.
think you and I both appreciate, like, I actually appreciate when somebody will throw tough questions at me and not read off of a script, because that's how I lead.
Yeah. It's it. I it's when I interview people. Actually, I had boss in another job, and he was trying to prep me for an interview, and he was like, "Send me, ask all these questions." I was like, "I'll ask two or three. I'm all about just learn on the fly." And then you end up coming with, like you said, very tough questions. And I've interviewed a lot of people where they're like, "Wow, this is a hard question." And then you see them in that pressure situation where they're actually trying to think, because when you come with, like you said, just scripted questions, a lot of people already know how to answer some of those things. You're like, tell me a tough time, and where where you were up against the wall, and what did you do? Like, people already have that rehearsed for themselves, so you got to get them on the spot.
Yeah. I think back at some of the better interviews that I was actually involved in, where I was the person being interviewed, and I remember distinctly that there's a few questions that you can get asked that when you answer them a specific way, usually the person on the other end of that table pauses because they're blown away, that you give that response, and one of them definitely always is that when somebody's interviewing, for a management, upper management position, that, when you basically tell the person sitting across from you, like, you know, a true manager is working for his people. They're not working for, technically you're responsible for them and they have to do what you say or you're the one directing them, but you ultimately are working for them. You're trying to extract the
Yeah.
proper amount of work out of them by learning enough about them and knowing what makes them tick and knowing what makes them, want to work harder and do better. And, it's all about it goes back to self-sacrifice. You really have to understand that as a leader, and not everybody's there to serve you. You're there to serve a leader. And I mean, I think that's what's wrong with, we're not going to go that route, but that's what's wrong with the political system. These people are put into office and, you know, originally those positions were self-sacrifice positions. You get put in charge of a town or a city or anything. You're there to sacrifice and work for those people, not them slave and work for you, right? So all leadership is tied in. We can even, do it with life coaching. It even comes down to a good relationship, right? As a man, you're dialed up with self-sacrifice. You're there to self-sacrifice for your family, do whatever it takes. And that's why it's so important in the proper structured relationship to have your significant other be supportive of you taking that leadership role and be supportive of, this is how to make a good relationship work. You're the man, you're going to set out to protect your family, provide for your family, do whatever it takes to make the right decisions, to self-sacrifice for the better good of your family. And you need the right team in place. You need the right partner in place. You need the right team. It comes down to proper training with your kids, proper structuring as they grow up to understand they're part of a family unit. And it's no different running a family than it is a business, than it is anything, a team, a group of people. It's all the same. And if you work off the right principles and you have the right qualities, then you're probably somebody that's going to be successful in a management role. You're going to be successful in a relationship role. You're going to be successful in every avenue of life, when you have those basic principles down.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're spot on that. It's it's all about people resources, right? Doesn't matter what, and whether it's in business, whether it's in relationships and understanding those qualities. And I think on the business side of things that you hit an important point, which is, and you taught me this too, is understanding what makes your employees tick, because not everybody's the same. Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by opportunity. Some people are motivated by just a good work environment. And if you have a blanket approach to motivation and motivating your employees, you're only going to hit a piece of them and wonder why the rest aren't performing like you'd want them to. Well, Joe Schmo's doing well. Why can't you do what Joe Schmo's doing? And it's unfortunate, but there's often a lot of leaders that will take that approach. I think an example would be like the employee of the month. Like some people are motivated by that, but some people they're just not. Like they don't care. They don't care about the recognition. Some people don't even want to be recognized. So it's an important point. Understanding what makes your team tick, and then being able to tap into that, and then you'll get the most out of them.
You have to have a definitive concern for everybody that works for you. No matter what your span of control is or authority, you have to have a genuine concern for everybody that's on your team so that you have the ability to be empathetic when somebody, all of a sudden, something happens to somebody and they're not the same on the Monday morning because they just had something bad happen on the weekend, something happened to their family. If you're a leader that can't show genuine empathy and support for that type of problem, you're never going to be able to expect that same type of support and work ethic from that employee. And you and I both know many people leave jobs all the time. Most people don't leave them for money. They leave them because of poor leadership. I mean,
Right. 1,000%.
it's affected all of us in our lives, and there's nobody that would be listening to this or that we would ever be coaching that hasn't gone through some of that. And those are the kind of experiences, though, that should help somebody genuinely grow. If they have it in them to be a leader, those are the kinds of experiences that start to happen to somebody to make them want to come out of their shell and be a leader, because you start saying, wow, I loved working for this person. Man, I hated working for that person. And you start really diving into, well, why did I like working for this person? Why
Hmm.
did I hate working for this person? And as you grow in life, there's usually common denominators, and you get to a certain or point in your life where you're like, this is the kind of person I want to work for. This is the kind of leader I want to work for if I have to work for somebody else. And this is the kind of leader, I want to be, or boss I want to be if people have to work for me. That way, that people, when they're nice to you, they're genuinely nice to you because they
Right.
care about you as well. They care about the overall business's success or the job success or whatever you're leading those people towards. They care about the team's success, and that's the most important. Whether you're managing a sports team, whether you're managing a labor position job, whether you're managing an office job, no matter what span of control you have, when you rule with those principles, everybody will want to get up and follow you. People will want to go the extra mile for you. People will want to be as much a part of the success because you've built it up that it's you don't work for me, you work for this overall goal. You work
Hmm.
for this team success. And again, those principles still relate to a good relationship at home.
Hmm.
And everybody's got to be bought into, hey, we're working towards this goal. Everybody on this team is just as important as the next person. Those all go back to self-sacrifice, empathy, you know, servitude. You're serving others when you're in a leadership position. The 95% of people that are followers, they don't even realize that good leaders are actually serving them. They just know that if they're in a good work environment, there's something about that good work environment that keeps them there, whether they're, like you said, you've got to really know people, whether it's their money driven, whether it's their time off driven, whether it's they're driven to be patted on the back when they've done a good job. Everybody's got something different that makes them tick. And it's so important to be almost like have a psychology degree, or, as we've grown in our positions, you pretty much could go teach a psychology class because you really spend so much time having to read people and understand people that it's truly unique. I mean, it's what drives, I think, both you and I to get up every day and to try everything we've been doing and working towards. It's that desire to, lead people, um, and get them to do what the team's objective is and want to do it. Want to be bought into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, to you and I's extent, it's not even so much financially motivated. It's just to be able, like you said, just to have this impact on a mass amount of people, and create that movement. And that's what makes us tick. And that's us. It's kind of like nutrition with every person. There's no blanket approach to losing weight. Every physical body is different than the next, so you can't take a templated approach. So in leadership, why would you take that same templated approach? It doesn't make sense, you know?
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. It's good to have a template to work off of, but you've got to have the ability to read people on the go and basically function on the fly. Man, you can't read off scripts. I feel like managing like that is almost like somebody that just becomes a teacher and doesn't understand how to think outside the box, or becomes a doctor and just reads out of the book. Here's how you cure this. This is what you should be looking at. It's no different.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, it's I think you talk about self-sacrifice and, standing up for your team. I think there's a level of authenticity to that, and who you are as a person, right? Because if when you bring you as a leader to the team, people can see that and they respect that, and that's where you get a lot of following. And when you focus on developing other people too as well, and then I guess you could almost make like a third point is you can't get to that level unless you've done self-development for yourself, right? You can't be able to have that perspective and that clarity unless you've resolved a lot of things for yourself too as well, and you've walked through things, and you've processed stuff. Because I've seen leaders where they just, again, come with a templated blanket approach, and they're wondering why they're not seeing results. And it comes down to, you're, like you said, essentially you're not reading the room. You know what I mean? Like, and that only comes from self development for yourself, and working through things in your past, personally and professionally, and understanding why you do what you do, what your strengths are, and then identifying the weaknesses. And you always did a real good job on that. As was delegating, what am I not good at? Let me find somebody who is. Go do it. Let's work faster. Speed the money sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, when you look at your highest, most successful CEOs that are in America and like running companies, they're usually not the guys with the degrees that even understand necessarily what their company's all about. They were just the best people at finding the right people to put into those positions, and they're great at organizing and leading and reading people and getting the most out of people, and that's, I think, when I started realizing that, in my development in my earlier years, is when I really started, realizing that, I hate to bring it up, but if you're in school and you're not in school to be a doctor or a lawyer, a scientist, uh, you're really wasting a lot of time. Probably wasting a lot of money,
Yeah.
because most development, you're going to get more life experience by just throwing yourself into the fire, throwing yourself into the mix. I remember going through a phase when I was real young and just taking a bunch of different jobs, working in different fields, and there was a time period where I just was, searching for myself, like, why can't I find my niche? Why can't I find it? And it was because I had to go through those processes to see a lot of good leadership, a lot of bad leadership, and kind of figure out, where do I fall into this place? Am I just supposed to follow people? And I knew that's wasn't the answer, because I was always designated from, very young, to be a leader and be in charge of people, be responsible for people. And that's not for everybody, but, no matter where you're at in life and no matter what your goals are, having leadership qualities is going to benefit you, even if you don't have to lead people, because those same qualities help you in marriages and relationships. They help you with dealing with friendships and handling people. Those skills, like, you can use them throughout life, whether you're a boss and responsible for people or not.
Yeah. 1000%. Cool. Well, I think we hit upon a lot of good stuff. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to elaborate on?
No, I mean, we've had a good discussion on the topic we were talking about, but I mean, this is like one of those topics that you and I both know. I mean, we can spend hours on this topic, because life experience teaches you so much, and if you're paying attention and truly analyze stuff the way we do, because we're analyzing it because we want to be able to take the good and pass it on to other people. I think that was the most genuine quality we both have, or we shared, was that, you know, we're trying to adapt and learn and grow so that we can pass it on to other people. Some people want their own personal growth and self growth, and they don't necessarily see it as, I'm doing this because I want to help others. And I think every life hiccup and every struggle that I ever went through, probably just because of my faith and the way I was raised, it's something where I want to be able to grow and learn and pass things on to other people and be as big of a help to other people, because I know how many people struggle with this kind of stuff and struggle to look for somebody to help them, mentor them, or coach them, or however you want to consider it, and bring them back into the right headspace. I deal with it every day. Um, Dealing with people on a constant basis. I deal with, just general customers. I deal with employees. I deal it with bosses, that are constantly searching for answers and searching for this kind of stuff. And, I think us doing this podcast, and I think us doing, just real sit down stuff, spitball and everything out there. I mean, I think if anything, this is how we're going to be able to, pass the right information on to people, and honestly help people.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, a lot of it just boils down to some of the basics. But as leader, it's perception essentially, right? It's what what are you seeing in front of you with the people, the situations, and being able to read that and have clarity around all of that, and the decision making process, and helping with all of that.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, this was fun, and until next week.
Yeah. Sounds good.